In December 1940, the United States committed its factories to the Allied war effort, creating an arsenal of democracy. Over the next 5 years, American shipyards and assembly lines produced roughly 2/3 of all Allied military equipment. This chart tracks the immediate economic impact. The national unemployment rate fell from 14% in 1940 down to just 1.2% by 1944. To meet that bottomless demand for labor, roughly 9 million Americans pulled up stakes, migrating from farms and small towns toward coastal defense plants. With the traditional labor pool exhausted, factories reached for new demographics. Millions of Black Southerners and rural workers answered the call, taking high-paying industrial jobs that had previously been closed to them. The war engine built ships and tanks, but it also reorganized the American population around the promise of a steady paycheck. The federal government, under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, directed this massive economic mobilization. In June 1941, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 8802, banning racial discrimination in defense industries. This directive officially opened the doors for minority workers migrating to the West Coast. 10 weeks after Pearl Harbor, the exact same administration issued Executive Order 9066. This directive authorized the military to remove any and all persons of Japanese ancestry from the entire West Coast. The order targeted about 120,000 people. Roughly 2/3 of them were natural-born American citizens, including tens of thousands of children. The same federal authority that engineered the country's greatest economic inclusion simultaneously authored its most severe violation of civil liberties. While the government used soaring rhetoric to welcome arriving defense workers, it justified the mass removal of Japanese Americans on the grounds of military necessity. Families were given a matter of days to settle their affairs. They were forced to sell homes, farms, and businesses at panic-induced prices, or simply abandon them. The military allowed them to take only what they could carry. Under armed guard, citizens were herded onto trains and buses bound for temporary holding sites. Before reaching permanent camps, many families spent the spring and summer of 1942 crowded into hastily converted assembly centers, including horse stalls at local racetracks. The bureaucratic efficiency that built the arsenal of democracy was applied with equal force to methodically erase a specific demographic from the coastal states. The military ultimately transferred these families to 10 remote incarceration camps in desolate areas like Manzanar, holding them in tart paper barracks behind barbed wire and guard towers. Even as their families sat imprisoned, thousands of young Nisei men volunteered or were drafted out of the camps to fight for the United States military, serving with extraordinary distinction. Back on the West Coast, the cities they left behind were buckling under the weight of the wartime boom. Hundreds of thousands of new defense workers arrived in a matter of months, completely overwhelming existing urban infrastructure and triggering a severe housing shortage. The war had created two simultaneous spatial crises on the exact same coast: unmanageable overcrowding for the workers welcomed by the state, and forced confinement for the citizens banished by it. These two migrations, the incoming wave of economic opportunity and the outbound wave of displacement, physically intersected. As Japanese American families were marched out of their neighborhoods, incoming defense workers moved directly into the properties they left behind. On city blocks in San Francisco and Los Angeles, storefronts, homes, and jobs vacated by the incarcerees were instantly taken up by the new arrivals. Many of the arriving workers were marginalized people seeking their own economic liberation, largely unaware they were participating in the dispossession of another community. The federal hand that opened a door to prosperity for defense workers had actively cleared the space for them by pushing Japanese Americans out of it. When the war ended, the coastal boomtowns began to fade. The incarceration camps closed, and Japanese Americans were released into a society where their previous lives had been dismantled. As we see in this graph, the financial devastation was nearly total. The established pre-war wealth of the Japanese American community dropped to a near-zero baseline upon their release, representing billions of dollars in lost property and income. It took 4 decades for the country to formally investigate the true motives behind the removal orders. In 1982, a federally chartered commission debunked the wartime claim of military necessity. The investigation confirmed no mass disloyalty was ever found, concluding the incarceration was driven by race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. The official wartime narrative was a fiction, constructed to justify a deliberate, prejudiced political choice. Following the Commission's report, Congress passed the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. Signed into law, the act provided a formal national apology and a $20,000 redress payment to each surviving incarceree. While this marked a rare instance of the United States formally admitting a great wrong against its own citizens, the acknowledgement arrived decades too late for many who had died waiting. The story of the Second World War homefront is one of massive economic opportunity, but that history is incomplete without its mirror image, the citizens stripped of everything by the very same government.